Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the good and the bad and how we can just shift our focus to create a shift of heart. And it's an interesting thing that we have the capability to do with manipulating our heart and mind around experience. So should be a good conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. And good morning and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. It's good to be here with you today. And we're talking about the good and the bad. And this is particularly in the context of suffering, like nostalgic suffering that we might subject ourselves to around, for instance, a loss or a lost relationship. And this conversation really comes from an ongoing conversation that I've referenced before, that I've been having with a client around a really painful relationship and a really painful breakup. And they would create tremendous pain for themselves in their remembering of the good times that were lost. And I think that a lot of us do that. And the thing is that the suffering that this person was experiencing has been so excruciating that well, we talked about this yesterday, actually, in the context of addiction. So, it was clearly unhealthy for this person. And it's really interesting because in the context of that relationship, what that person did was they overlooked a lot of things, deliberately turned away from recognizing a lot of things that were offensive and egregious. And so what we did, and I think it was impactful, was to bring those things present. And so if you can imagine a scale, the scale of all the positivity was the heavier aspect, the goodness, the joy, or the rewards that were intermittent, by the way, which was part of the pain of this relationship, is the manipulation around it. But anyway, all the goodness was what was weighing heavy. And what we did was we shifted the balance to put emphasis on all the things that had been deliberately ignored or overlooked, all the things that were the negatives. And this was a survival technique, I guess, for this person, or a survival intervention, to be able to let this person move on, because their draw to this person was so powerful to them that it overcame their better judgment again and again and again. And so we created greater aversion, brought the aversions present, and the aversions then became the heavier weight. The balance of the scales tipped pretty dramatically into this space of all the things that were unappealing about this relationship, even repugnant and repulsive. And so what was wild was, just through this mental gymnastics, the attraction completely disappeared. When present to those memories, when prioritizing those memories and those perspectives and those feelings, the attraction to this person that was so toxic for them completely dissipated. There was no attraction. In fact, there was more of a repulsion. And it's a testament to our subjectivity that that kind of process can be so effective and so powerful. But it also had to be at a point where this person was ready to say, okay, I'm done. Because it's a tough thing to do, right? It may not be reversible to do that, and or to undo that that shift of mind. And the point was to allow this person freedom. So it's really fascinating. It wasn't something to do lightly, because there are consequences. But hopefully at some point this person will come to a greater sense of balance and choice around this relationship. But it was something that was really a negative influence on them in so many ways, to be at the whim of this other person in so many ways. So in thinking about this, this is really an NLP technique, neuro-linguistic programming, where you're wanting to change a behavior. You can do something where you're stacking all these reactions. You're stacking either really powerful negatives or really powerful positives, depending on what you're trying to create. And when you stack those things and then weigh it against the other thing, it kind of cancels the other vantage point. And it's so fascinating to me to recognize how malleable our consciousness is, how malleable our responses can be. So Rosalind says, so the attraction changed to repulsion in that exercise. It did, actually. So Rosalind goes on to say, I used to often recall a past relationship with resentment. Now I can look back and know it was a blessing in disguise. So it may be that recalling the past relationship with resentment was something that was a survival mechanism to allow you to be free of it, and then to be able to look back at the blessings. In this relationship, there have been many blessings. And what was problematic is that along with those blessings were a lot of really toxic kinds of dynamics and manipulations. And it was all the blessings that made made it more torturous, made this person more susceptible to the manipulations of their partner. And so by cultivating the negative feelings, they're able to free themselves. Eventually, hopefully, they'll be able to look back and see both sides. But right now, that's not serving them. Right now, they're just enmeshed, and they need to be able to extricate themselves more fully. And because they've been manufacturing their own agony by remembering all the goodness at this moment, when they're so vulnerable, and only the goodness, like not recognizing all these other things that were really violations of their own values. So there's this degree of self-betrayal that was part of this too. And as this person is kind of reconstructing themselves, it's really important for them to recognize the places where they gave this other person a pass, out of their love and appreciation for this person. They allowed for all these things that were really counter to their own values and beliefs. So just to go a little bit more deeply into this conversation about how malleable our perspectives can be, it's really, really, really remarkable. So Rosalind, thank you for this. Rosalind says, by the way, sending Jenny blessings for medical treatment this morning. She sent me an update yesterday that she would be in treatment this morning. So Jenny is one of our regulars, and if you too would be kind enough to be sending some blessings her way, that would be just a beautiful thing. And certainly I am. And Rosalind, I so appreciate you calling that out this morning. Thank you. And we tend to think that reality is a thing. And it may be. However, I don't think it's a thing that we necessarily have direct access to. And this is a case in point, the good and the bad. By manipulating our perception of the good and the bad, we can elevate or decimate our perspectives, our feelings, our responses to different stimulus or stimuli. It's crazy. It's wild to recognize how easily manipulated we can be. And we can look at that, in fact, in terms of the news. And I see this is so fascinating. I mean, human beings, we are just so endlessly fascinating. But I see this in response to the news. So for instance, in the political arena, there's been a lot of divisiveness, certainly, but with the announcement of Joe Biden's running, people are talking about how they don't want to reelect Joe Biden and his policies, like he's just been awful. And then if we ask, well, what is it that's been awful exactly? There's no information around that. It's just like there's a lot of messaging out in the public that Biden's administration and Biden himself has done all these egregious things, but nobody has content about what they are, or if very few people really have any information to back that up. It's just like a general messaging point, and it's fascinating. I don't know much of anything about what Biden's administration has accomplished, good or bad, actually. So that's on me. But, I think that that's the case with so many of us. And we are readily manipulated by our media, the good and the bad. And so in this case, Biden's gotten a lot of bad press, whether or not there's stuff to back that up, and we don't seem to have that data, that information as part of our conversation. It's fascinating. And, I've also had conversations with people about some of Trump's transgressions. And typically what comes up in that conversation is, yeah, but Hillary Clinton. And that's just a parroting of the media programming that we've had, to say, well, wait a second, what does one have to do with the other? And where we conflate these different ideas, and it's been so popularized in the media that we just repeat it. And it's like hearing these sound bites played back to recognize, to give us an awareness of the deep programming that we are subject to. And the thing is, we can use this as a tool for ourselves and our own well-being. If you're remembering something with pain because you're feeling the loss of tenderness, then there are other ways to remember, or other portions of experiences to remember, that will generate entirely different emotions and entirely different perspectives. And so when we become aware of how malleable our experience is, there's a power that we have access to actively take that experience in hand, by using our own predispositions to a better effect. So if we recognize, like, we often get into a pattern loop, thinking the same thing over and over and over again, shifting the thought, inserting something new into the thought. Some NLP techniques involve what are called submodalities. So for instance, and I've talked to you about this before, a friend had cut themselves pretty badly, and there was lots of blood, and it was very, very traumatic for them. And they had PTSD around this incident, because they kept visualizing the blood, and it was all very vivid and traumatizing. And something as simple as visualizing the image in black and white instead of color denatured it. It diffused the intensity of the emotion and allowed for that person to no longer have the trauma around it. So it was the vividness of the color, the vividness of the visualization, that helped to continue to re-traumatize them. And when they were able to make it in black and white, it neutered it, and it neutralized it. And so there are all different ways that we can shift our way of thinking. One is, we started off talking about the good and the bad. We can, depending on the outcome that we're looking for, we can connect to and emphasize the good, or we can connect to and emphasize the bad. And part of the power of that kind of process is found in actually experiencing the emotion, actually being aware of it in our bodies, to embody that experience. So for this person I was talking about that was looking to be freed from this relationship, we actually created a visceral sense of nausea and disgust at certain behaviors from this other person, certain patterns from this other person, and created a bunch of negative associations to allow them to no longer have the draw to the person that they did. And, you want to, what keeps coming up for me is the ethics of these kinds of manipulations. They're manipulations even when we do them mindfully, right? And out of choice, they are manipulations. But this process that we did yesterday has potential to really change all interaction with this other person, and to change the whole dynamic in a very profound way. And so it's not, it's kind of like scorched earth policy, like that. It has its ramifications, and it's not to be undertaken lightly, because when we do have a change of heart, we have a change of mind. When we have a change of mind, we have a change of heart, and it may not be reversible. I don't know about you, but I've been in relationships where something happened and that was it. That was the end of it. That just was the end of it. There was no going back. There was no coming back from whatever that rift was that occurred. Once it was over, it was over. And so we have tremendous power at our fingertips to be able to manipulate our own minds and hearts. And I'm using the word manipulate. We can also use the word orchestrate, but the thing is, it is a manipulation, even if it's even if it's conscious. We're shifting things around with particular intent. And I think we often feel that we're the victim of things, that we're at the effect of things that we can't change. But just this simple example shows how easy it is in so many ways to shift ourselves. And the thing here is that this experience for this person wasn't rational. And so there was no amount of talking this person out of being in this relationship. They weren't able to do it. I wasn't able to do it. Talking them out of the pain, even though they knew it was not positive relationship for them. The whole attraction wasn't rational. And so it was necessary to move into a visceral, physiological, emotional realm to create a different response in that dimension. And that shifted the whole dynamic in a very, very profound way. I'm truly deeply fascinated by how the mind works, how our body mind works, and the power that we have. I guess it's, a power of self-determination. We often just go down a path that where we convince ourselves that something is true or not true, and where we live at the effect of circumstances. And we do have tremendous power to shift our beingness, consciously or otherwise. And it's a matter of finding the chink in the armor, so to speak. It's a matter of finding the way in. And then what sits behind that is our ethics, and our how circumspect we can be, how willing we are to look at a bigger picture and to recognize the impact that our actions may have. So Rosalind said, that's fascinating and very powerful. Was loving kindness part of that technique? What aspect or questions made the shift again? So in this case, the loving kindness was for this person that was suffering so deeply. And the thing that has been their downfall in so many ways is their loving kindness toward this other person. And what we were able to do was to bring them back to all the things that they overlooked in the behavior of this other person, and to cultivate a connection within themselves to the things that they actually found repugnant and repulsive. And so it was not about loving kindness toward the other person. It was about really allowing the person that was suffering to see what they really saw, to own all the things that they had overlooked deliberately, that was really in a violation of their own values, where they violated their own values by overlooking these things that were occurring in the context of the relationship. So it's an interesting question, Rosalind. Like, what is loving kindness? What we were doing here was reconnecting this person with themselves and their own values. And in the face of that, their feelings shifted. So it's complex, super complex. And that's it for today. We could talk about this endlessly for sure. But I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And we go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I'm so grateful to you and your time and your thoughtfulness and your willingness to consider these curious questions of being human beings together. It's just wild. Anyway, until next time.